That special time of year is upon us, the Jewish High Holy Days. It's a time of year that the Jewish people look forward to all year long. It happens in the fall, and it's a time when there is repentance. It's a time when there is celebration. It's a season of fasting and a season of feasting. And so as a special treat, to help celebrate one of the High Holy Days, Rosh HaShanah, I have my friend with me, Mary Jo Pierce. She's from Gateway Church in Southlake, Texas, and she is the pastor over Prayer and Intercession. And just a little side note, she has her own show on baking bread, right? What's the name of that?
Begin with Bread.
Begin with Bread. You can find her on YouTube, and I think you'll be really amazed. She's an expert bread maker, and so we're so blessed to have her with us. And anyway, so without further ado, I would like to present Mary Jo and her famous apple swirl bread, which is just perfect for the Jewish New Year. Have fun, Mary Jo.
Thanks, Bonnie. Well, I want to welcome you into my kitchen where we do some fasting, we do a lot of feasting. It's a real privilege to be asked to share a recipe with the MJBI family. An expert at bread making, I'm not sure. I'm new at bread making, but I have found it to be a fascinating, fun Shabbat experience, and I have found bread making to be very forgiving. So let's have fun with this recipe. It's not very complicated. It has 9 or 10 different ingredients, and we're going to start with baking the bread, or making the bread and the dough. All right, so let's get started. So first we have what's called dry ingredients. And for the dry ingredients, you want to put them all together in one container. And we are going to put 2 cups of flour. So, now, one thing I like about the kitchen is it's a great place to be messy. In fact, I tell my grandkids, the messier you are in the kitchen, the more fun you're having. So we're going to do 2 cups of flour. And by the way, I'm using bread flour. And someone said when you're using yeast, use bread flour. So I figured they knew more about it than I did, so bread flour it is. And then it's 2 tablespoons. I love these containers. That one's a little tough. 2 tablespoons of sugar. And I'm kind of an ish cook. A little 2 tablespoons ish, right? A little extra sugar for. And then a teaspoon and a half of yeast. So 1.5 teaspoons of yeast, and that's our dry ingredients. You with me so far? I love the bread making process. Every bit of the ingredient is like visiting with a friend. I love to, I don't know, just the whole experience is just enjoyable for me. So just mix those ingredients together. Then we have wet ingredients, and I've got it for you here. You have 3/4 of a cup of milk, and you can use 1%. If I use low-fat milk, I always add a little half and half just to make me feel good. And there's 2 tablespoons of butter. Then you have to warm the milk to about 110 degrees. So give me a minute, I'm going to do that. All right, what you want to do is you really want to check the temperature of the milk. And when you check the temperature, make sure that the thermometer doesn't touch the glass. You'll get a false reading. That is what my home ec teacher taught me a long time ago. And I figured she knows more about it than I do. All right, 110 degrees, yay! That was right. Okay, now what you want to do is you want to add the wet ingredients to the dry ingredients, and you want to do it slowly. And you just watch it happen. Starting to form a beautiful ball. You add all your wet ingredients. And then I've heard that you get to know your bread, and I think it's true. Because the more I do it, the more I'm familiar with what I want the dough to look like and feel like. If it's a little wet, you can add a little more flour, but what you want to do is beat the dough until the dough starts climbing up the dough hook. Is that a cute expression? So it looks a little dry. So let me beat it together, see if it starts coming together. If you have a machine like this, it can do all the work for you, but you know what? This is one of the things, one of the gifts I believe God's given us in bread baking. We get to enjoy the process. And, oh, look at that. Get to enjoy the process. So let me show it to you. It's just a ball of dough, and it's a little sticky. So what I want to do is I'll move this out of the way a little. All right? Okay. And get yourself a surface. I like to use, and I'm fortunate enough, I can use my countertop. You can also use a cutting board, but whatever you do, you want to flour the surface. So you need to knead it. You need to knead it. That's funny. You need to knead it about 100 times. And kneading is just rolling the dough, folding it over and rolling it. All right. Now, isn't that beautiful? See, it didn't get mad at me, didn't mistreat it. So what you want to do now is you want to tuck it in. Oh, such beautiful. All right, I'm going to tuck it in and make a nice ba-bum. And then they say you put it in a greased container. So that's what I do. Put a little grease in. Oops, that's a little much. Pour out the extra. I just swirl it around, and then I grease the ball, the dough, put it in here. All right, so I'm going to put it on a warm surface, and what I get to do here at home is I have a griddle. It's a warm surface with lice underneath, and I put it there, and it has to rise about 20 or 30 minutes. And then what I love to do is I like to be nice to my bread and cover it with something special. So I use one of my special tea towels. And we tuck it in, say a quick prayer, and we hope it makes us proud. And we'll see in about 20 or 30 minutes if that's the case. Okay, well, apple swirl bread calls for bread and apples. So I'm going to demonstrate the apple technique. It's not that difficult, but it's important. So I like to use Granny Smith apples, but I've also used Honeycrisp or any other baking apple. And, you know, have fun with this. If you want to use 2 different kind of apples in the recipe, just this is what I've learned about recipes, make it yours. Do one thing just a little bit different and make it yours. So what we do is we peel the apple, and I like to cut it in half. And then here's a secret about this recipe. You're going to tuck these apples in like you're tucking kids into bed at night and putting blankets over them, or you're going to tuck them around the bread dough that strips. So you want to slice your apples and picture them being not too thick, about the same size thickness, but again, it's forgiving, and there's nothing perfect about baking, is there? And so you just slice your apples because you're going to be tucking them in, and you want them, I can already see, you want them about that high because the bread's going to be that high. Some are not, and they tuck over the bread. Doesn't matter. So what you want to do when you're cutting the 6 to 8 apples, and this is kind of important, is keep them in water. In fact, keep them in lemon water. Here's water, and here's lemon. And what it does is it keeps them from browning. So you'll cut 6 to 8 apples. We're going to take the apples out, and you're going to pat them dry because you don't want them to be wet. Remember, they're going to be tucked in around the bread. So I put them on a towel. Yeah. And I pat them dry. Then I cinnamon and sugar them. And I have a little cinnamon sugar shaker. Cinnamon sugar shaker. And so you just cinnamon sugar them to taste. And they're going to tuck in around the bread. So that's the process of making your apples sliced just right. All right, well now, ready for the fun part? Although every part's a fun part. But this one's very interesting because you want to see if your bread was good to you. So you go over here and you look at the dough and oh my goodness, Isn't that beautiful? Look at that. It's so friendly. It at least doubled. And so what you want to do is flour whatever surface you're going to use to roll out. This is the happiest part. I wish you could feel this. It's just amazing. Wait a minute, a moment. I'm always so happy when this part works. All right, so then they say punch your bread. I do not know why. But if they say it, they know more about it than I do. So I punch it. And what you're going to do is you're going to roll it out into a rectangle now because you're going to think strips, all right? So it's on floured surface. And you get your wood rolling pin, which is going to turn into an heirloom someday. See how it kind of shrinks back into place? You'd think it's not behaving, but actually it's showing off. Because when there is some elasticity to it, it means it worked. Again, I don't know why, but people who know more about it say that's true. I believe it. All right, so here you go. It's a nice rectangle. Aren't you proud of me? All right, so what we're gonna do now is we're going to cinnamon and sugar it to taste. Can you over cinnamon something? I don't think so. There we go. And since you want it to stay in place, I just roll it in. All right, so there you go. There's your makings of your apple swirl bread. Then you take a sharp knife, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna cut it into 1-inch strips, 1-inch-ish strips. So just remember that your apples that you cut are gonna tuck between these strips. So there you go, you got your strips. You've got your apples that you already cinnamoned and, sliced and cinnamoned. Whoops. Then you're going to take your baking board, and in this case I'm using this one, and you're going to lightly oil it, the surface. That's my own tip. Just spread the oil around. All right, so we got that done. Now, this is how you're going to start. You're going to take a strip, and you're going to, this is the center, and you're going to tuck in, and I break it in half, and what you're going to do, it almost looks like a flower bud when you're done. So I'm just kind of making the center of the flower bud. Because it's small, or the center is smaller in circumference, you want to kind of twist the apples around, and sometimes I break them in half, and I tuck the apples in, tucking, and just keep wrapping the bread around, and that's a little stiff, so I snap the apple, and I tuck that one in. Very forgiving, very creative. And there we go. So it's a tucking process, roundabout. All right, now you need another strip, and so I just connect the other strip where I let off, and you just keep the tucking process. Then what you want to do is you want to continue this process until you've got the size that you want. Now see, that apple was a little tall. Just snap it down to size. And you'll continue doing this until you get the portion size you want. For example, that's a nice portion size. Isn't that pretty? Because remember, it's going to rise again. So you could stop here and just make that your serving size. Or if you want to keep going, you can keep going. And then just clip, make sure that the last piece of bread is tucked in, and kind of like love on it a little. Voila, that's it. All right, now we're going to get ready. This is where you've got some time to do some other things, to get ready for your guests or to rest and enjoy Shabbat, to do some reading or what. This rises for about an hour and a half. So we're going to put it again in a warm spot, and we're going to cover it with a favorite towel. I'm going to use a new favorite towel, Home Sweet Home. Tuck that in. And in an hour and a half, it's going to make you look like an amazing apple swirl bread maker. Well, look what an hour and a half can do for you. It can make your apple swirled bread look this beautiful and this ready to bake. So what we want to do is now we want to like put makeup on the bread by using egg wash. And it gives it a nice, shiny, glistening appearance because I'm getting ready to bake it now, and you bake it for about 20 or 30 minutes. So what I've done is I've taken egg wash, which is 1 egg and some milk, mixed it together. And then remember I said who can use too much cinnamon? So I added a little cinnamon sugar to it. And so I'm just like painting it. Yes, I am. There you go. All right, once you've finished brushing the egg glaze on, it's ready to go in the oven. And you put it in at 350 degrees. You put it in for 25-30 minutes, depending on the size and how thick your slices are. And you'll know when it's done. Just keep checking it around 25 minutes. All right, so we're gonna put it in the oven now. Ta-da! Okay, MJBI family, I wanted you to have the full experience. So even though I demonstrated serving portion sizes of the apple swirl bread, I wanted you to see the pizza size. Isn't it beautiful? And all it was continued tucking in the apples around the strips of bread. Now for the fun part, after it's been baked and it comes out of the oven warm, what you're gonna do is you're gonna put a glaze on it, and it's an orange juice, brown sugar, butter glaze. And Bonnie has told me that the recipe is going to be made available with the video. So you make the glaze and then you just brush it on, and it adds such a beautiful, shiny appearance. And not only does it look good, but it adds a wonderful flavor to it. So we're all brushed up there. So, I've been told that this looks good enough to eat. So we're gonna do just that.